Hello everyone, welcome back. By the time this video comes out, hopefully it's Nahida's birthday, so first off, happy birthday Nahida. Now, we also have a Nahida rerun incoming, and naturally the big answer is yes, you should get her. That of course covers the big question, but the really big question is whether or not you maybe should actually just go for Xilonen right now, or whether you should wait for Nahida, or whether you should wait for Mavuika. That's going to be a rather complicated question to answer. Not as complicated as subscribing to the channel. Did you know that I've actually been doing a series of videos on Xilonen and the way that she interacts with a lot of teams? Now, of course, this particular series is going to take a brief pause because we need to talk about the Nahida and Hu Tao reruns. But after that, we're going to be going right back to talking about Xilonen even more. We're going to look at Nivelette, we're going to do some really degenerate shenanigans, and we're also going to compare Xilonen with C6 Chevy as per a request. That means that you should actually hit that subscribe button as well as ringing that bell, because that way you can stay updated with the latest videos that I managed to get out. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about the birthday girl. So Nahida's role in Dendro teams has not really changed. She's still pretty much the top tier Dendro support in the game. In a lot of spread, Aggravate, and Hyperbloom teams, or Quick Bloom teams, she is pretty much the best character to bring along because of her consistent Dendro application as well as that EM share that is part of her ult. That being said though, since her last rerun, we have had quite a few new characters arrive that are actually very interesting with regards to Nahida, so let's just quickly go over how they interact with her. Let's start off with Xianyun. Now, basically with the bird, everyone can play Plunge DPS, as it's very interesting because Plunge DPS doesn't actually have an ICD. What does that mean? You can play Plunge Nahida and just keep doing spread reactions all the damn time. So there is that. Or you can play Plunge Electro characters like Plunge Lisa with Nahida as part of the team, and you just do a lot of Aggravate damage as well. And then on top of that, that EM sharing, like I mentioned, as part of Nahida's ult, is very, very powerful. Another character that showed up is, of course, Clorinde. Now, in Aggravate teams, Nahida is pretty much one of the best Dendro applicators in the game for someone like Clorinde. Therefore, you do massive amounts of damage, well, with Clorinde. So that's why one of her quote-unquote most meta teams involves Nahida and Fischl. So that's really, really good. The synergy is there. She's really, really strong, but also in teams that aren't necessarily the meta one, like Clorinde Chaos, there are variants that involve Nahida and Clorinde. Now we need to talk about Emilie, because, okay, here's the thing. Emilie is kind of more of a direct competition to Nahida, in the sense that, well, they're both off-field Dendro DPS characters, but they're actually quite different in the sense that Nahida is reaction heavy for her Dendro DPS, but Emilie is just straight up like raw DPS damage. Yes, she uses the burning reaction, but that's only just to buff her actual damage, not to actually react off. Just keep that in mind, that's kind of the difference there. There's also a few other things that Emilie is better than Nahida in, for example, multi-wave content, but there's a few things that Nahida is better than Emilie against, which is, of course, you know, that whole EM thing, and the fact that you only have to tag enemies in order to hit all of them simultaneously, whereas if you want to hit multiple enemies simultaneously with someone like Emilie, you're going to need to group them up in order to get hit by an AoE, and I don't even know if you can hit 8 enemies with Emilie's AoE, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So yeah, look, in terms of like just off-field DPS, yeah, they're both pretty much similar, but they do end up having just completely different teams. So not necessarily competition, but they are very similar in at least like their overall sort of damage experience, if you know what I mean. And then we have Sigewinne, who buffs off-field skill damage. Normally this is supposed to be, I think, for someone like Farina, but it also works for someone like Nahida. On top of that, if you want to play Burn Vape Sigewinne, well, Nahida is really good for that. If it works for Nivelette, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't work for someone like Sigewinne. Speaking of Burn Vape, we also have Mualani. Mualani works well in Burn Vape teams with Nahida, of course, once again, because of that EM share, because there's not that many ways of buffing Hydro, especially Hydro HP DPS characters, unless you want to go for like C2 Xilonen or C2 Xilonen. So, you know, we have some options there. But in the grand scheme of things, EM buffs are also really, really potent for these kinds of HP scalers. Just be careful though if you're trying to play Burn Vape Mualani with someone like the High, because it turns out the burning from Burn Vape might actually cause the highest skill to desync with Mualani's forward vaping, which can be a little bit of a problem. At the end of the day, Nahida still remains the go-to choice for a lot of Dendro teams, especially those reaction Dendro teams. But these newer characters do offer some very interesting dynamics that I think are worth considering if you want to get Nahida. Okay, it's time to answer the big question. Should we get Xilonen right now? Or should we actually go for Nahida? Or should we wait even more until Mavuika shows up? Alright, let's get into it. I think there is a reason to just go straight for Xilonen right now if you can't afford Nahida and just wait until afterwards, because Xilonen is a very, very versatile support who works in a lot of teams, a lot more teams than Kazuha, and she also heals. That being said though, if you do already use Kazuha or Sucrose in some meaningful capacity, maybe you have a reason to skip Xilonen and actually go for someone like Nahida. But just keep in mind that Xilonen's buffing versatility is very, very good. Also, Xilonen should have a rerun soon. That being said though, there was a character that was also released in an X.1 patch, Risley, who hasn't had a rerun yet, which means, unfortunately, I must remind you, there is a very small but unfortunately non-zero chance that we might not get a Xilonen rerun in the next 33 years. Now, of course, there's also reasons to get Nahida, because she is really, really good in pretty much all reaction-based Dendro teams, which is almost all Dendro teams. And of course, if you want to play any spread or aggravate teams, Nahida is the best choice by a pretty solid margin. That being said, even though she's the best choice, she's not the only choice. You do have alternatives. Baiju, Yao Yao, DMC, hell, C4 Kirara is also an alternative right there. It's just that with Nahida's EM sharing and her even stronger Dendro app, yeah, she is the best. But let me just remind you, she's not the only one. So if you want a reason to skip her, that's reason number one. Reason number two is she's a really, really popular Archon, which means if you're going to skip her now, well, you will need to wait an entire year for the next region cycle, but she should be returning for another rerun in the next region cycle. And finally, there's Mavuika, who allegedly maybe is going to be playable in 5.3? We don't know. Not only do we not know if she's actually playable, I mean, I'm pretty sure she's going to be playable. We also have no idea what she does yet. There's not even real leaks on what she does yet, because it's not 5.2, it's currently 5.1. I have no idea what she does. If you want to actually wait on an unknown entity, go for it. Especially if you have reasons not to get Xilonen or Nahida, then go for it, right? But what I suspect is the case, based on extremely suspicious rumors, is that she's going to be a DPS Archon, like the Raiden Shogun if you're not playing Heresy Raiden. So that's something to consider if you're interested in that. Maybe then you may want to actually wait on that unknown entity then. But I don't know, and neither do you. And I don't think anyone outside of Hoyo staff knows what Mavuika's kit is going to end up being. At the end of the day, I feel like Nahida is the safe pick, mainly because Xilonen's going to be running soon, and because Mavuika is an unknown entity. That's what I think. Okay, so for Nahida, there's roughly 50 different teams, and there's about 3,000 permutations and variations for each of those teams. So instead of going through all of them, I'm just going to go through 3 teams that I like the most with Nahida. The first team is going to be International. This is my favorite team of all time, probably, because it is a quick swap team that features 2 of my most favorite characters, i.e. 2 of the hottest waifus in the game, i.e. Lisa and the illustrious Yaemiko, the wise and beautiful. And because this is a quick swap team, this whole multi-wave shenanigan is not a problem for Nahida, because you can quick swap to Nahida whenever the hell you want. Ergo, this is a team where Nahida just basically is perfect for the entire team, which is really, really good. On top of that, Xilonen showed up, and like I mentioned in the Aggravate Xilonen video, she's really, really good for Aggravate teams. Ergo, this is my favorite team of all time. 3 super duper hot waifus plus Nahida. Gotta love that. It's really, really good. It's really, really fun. And it's really, really strong. Then there's also Nilou teams. Look, if you want to see Bloom cores just popping off 24/7 and they do a lot of damage, Nilou teams have and will always will be really, really fun to play. I have Key of Kashna's Suit and C2 Nahida. So let me give you a frame of reference. 70k Bloom cores. Need I say more? Not only is it a hilarious team, it's also a pretty serotonin-filled team. So we do like that. And finally, there is the Tignari spread hyper carry teams. When I want to do uber fast, like boss killing speed runs, I put Nahida and Tignari together with an off-field electric character like Yai Miko, and suddenly I'm killing things really, really quickly. This team really is akin to playing like a Nuvi Farina team before Nuvi Farina was ever a thing. Alright, let's talk about Nahida's build. Nothing has changed since the last time she reran, so not really a whole lot needs to be said. That being said though, I still reckon you should just stick to running 4-piece Deepwood on her. There are other artifact sets like Golden Troop that are really good for her DPS, but the reality is, look, there's a lot of teams where she's the only Dendro character, especially Hyperbloom and Quick Bloom teams. In that case, you might as well just keep Deepwood on her, because then at least she'll always have Dendro Res Shred, which is really, really good. When it comes to the stats, you can do any combination of EM, Dendro, and Crit. It's entirely up to you, depending on your weapons, well, your weapon choice. There are top 1% builds for any weapon, I think, that has any combination of EM, Dendro, and Crit, so that's something to keep in mind. That being said though, I'm going to put my foot down and say I reckon double EM Crit is probably the best combination to go for, only because you still get more or less the same kind of DPS that you would get from like EM, Dendro, Crit, but at the same time with the additional EM, for the increasing prevalence of burn vape teams and burn melt teams like Burn Loy or Mualani, you can actually give your on-fielder, Aloy or Mualani, additional EM by running more EM. So, you know, that's actually kind of nice, and then you don't have to swap your build around too much. So yeah, I kind of feel like double EM Crit is probably the way to go. When it comes to weapons, none of the new weapons are all that useful. I mean, there's the event catalyst that could be used for meme builds, but I'd rather do a meme build with like Kokomi than with Nahida. At the end of the day, Floating Dreams and Kagura's Verity are still her best 5-star choices. And when it comes to the 4-star choices, it's pretty much Witsith, Hakushin Ring, Favj if you're really desperate for energy, or if you want to play Medic Nahida, then there's always Prototype Amber as well. And finally, when it comes to Nahida's constellations, well, they're pretty good. And I have C2 Nahida, so I can at least speak firsthand to 2 of them, and then I'm going to have to just sort of guess, I guess, with the other 2. So, C1 Nahida is actually, in my opinion, pretty damn strong, especially with the prevalence of burn vape teams and other burning teams as well. But also for Nilou teams, C1 is actually really, really good. So yeah, look, there's people who are going to tell you that if you just stop at C1, you're kind of griefing. I actually kind of disagree. I think if you stop at C1, you're absolutely perfectly fine. And then there's also C2, which is actually really, really good as well, because you get Death Shred if you're playing Aggravate teams, like International, and there's also, you know, the extra Dendro core damage. That is why I'm actually able to get 70k Dendro Blooms with Nilou, so that's really, really nice as well. C3 is skill levels, C5 is ult levels, both of them are actually really, really good. Then we also have C4, which is an EM boost, which is actually kind of nice. But that's only for Nahida, so it's just really extra damage. I don't think it's really that important. And then there's C6, which is just your standard, really powerful 5-star C6 these days, where Nahida just suddenly does a lot of on-field damage. At the end of the day, you don't actually need any of Nahida's constellations for Nahida to be really, really strong. That being said though, I have seen Nahida, and I can tell you firsthand, C2 Nahida is really, really strong. So that's basically it for Nahida. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I think at the end of the day, she's just really, really versatile and probably one of the closest characters to being a must-pull for Dendro teams, but she's not a must-pull. As always, there are no such thing as must-pulls in this game, but she's really, really good, so I do highly recommend her. Once again, happy birthday, Nahida. And otherwise, let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Are you pulling for Nahida, or do you already have Nahida? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.